live, so you should start getting your notifications.
Okay, got it.
The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the stream.
Do you want me to be pushing it out?
I'm going to switch over to the stream so I can hear the stream. I think I have the headphones set up to hear the stream so that I can, monitor the sound. But we'll see.
Gotcha.
All right.
Yeah, I just got an update. We're live now.
All right.
All right, let me see if I can hear.
It should be popping up.
Yep. Should be popping up.
All right.
And hopefully people will let us know if they can hear us.
Oh, they always do.
Et cetera,
They're very
et
good
cetera,
like that.
et cetera.
Yes.
And I had everything running, and I tested these headphones, and I thought that I was on the right setting. No, I'm not. Hold on.
All right. I don't see it yet.
Yep. So the sound on the show sounds fine to me. I'm not going to be able to talk and listen to it at the same time because there's a delay.
Right.
But it sounds all right to me. It sounds clear.
Great.
So hopefully we got that squared away.
All right.
We've got a couple of people coming onto the show.
One of them is me.
Yeah, and one of them's probably me.
Yes. Hello, Nicole Matz. We haven't seen you in a while.
Yes, we have not seen Nicole
Yes,
Matz.
Thank you. Gail is here. Stacy Oyster is here. Oh, Mom says it's low sound.
What's that?
Try turning up. Judy is here. Lauren Driscoll is here. All right.
Somebody's saying low sound.
Yeah, my mom is, but I don't know. We'll see. Matt is not very loud. What? said nobody ever.
I have the highest return right now on the soundboard. I'm almost maxing out what I can do on the soundboard.
I
on
never have
microphone
trouble
one.
hearing you.
Right.
Never.
So
All right.
our
Check,
hearing
check,
our
check.
sponsor last week was Stone's Hearing Aids.
Yes.
Maybe there's some people watching that should head over to Stone's and talk to Matt Daly or Mark Shanta. Get a hearing test.
Maybe it's their hearing. Maybe it's their computer. Maybe it's their settings. Yeah.
It could be the settings
So
on your
you know
phone.
what? I was thinking about after we had the show where Stone's sponsored is that for people that are hard of hearing and that have difficulty hearing, with the masks. So now you've got an extra layer of muffling that's going to make it even more difficult for people to hear and make it difficult for people to read lips. Right. Like, so Matt, you would tend to be a little bit of a lip reader.
I'm a big lip reader because I couldn't hear.
And so having the masks on,
it does complicate my life.
Right.
But now I have the aids. Now I got to go back and get the aids adjusted because I'm getting some kind of feedback in the aids that's driving me nuts.
Yeah.
But
it does. Sometimes it does take a little bit of it tweaking back and forth.
I know it's going to take a little bit.
Which is why it's great to work with a local company because they're they're local regular people.
Yep.
With a local office. Yeah.
I grew up with Matt Daly. He's like one of my oldest friends in the whole world. Yeah. So I go in there and I know everybody.
Yeah. So if you've been on the fence about whether you think you need hearing aids or not, the mask situation definitely is a
accelerant.
Yes, exactly. A good impetus for getting it done. Finally.
I mean, 100%. Yes, because I was having so many struggles, and then when we were outside, I couldn't hear, especially when somebody was anything that starts running in the background and somebody's trying to talk to me. I can't hear that.
Right. And so how much of life were you missing, Matt?
I was missing a lot because once the aids got on and started running and I can now hear.
Right.
It was amazing. I put them in.
Did it help you track that deer?
Yes, it did actually.
Okay, good.
That's a hold on. We're not getting
Okay, we'll talk about that off air. Hi everyone. Hi, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. Anyway.
Yeah, all right. So we still are getting some can't hear very good.
Laura Johnson, I don't know what to do.
Right.
I'm going to do one last thing, and if it doesn't fix it, just turn the volume up on your device.
Right.
I don't know what else to do. Because I'm actually listening to the stream on Facebook in the headphones. Sounds clear as a bell to me.
Okay.
And I don't have my aids on.
Okay. So even without that. All right, folks. So Matt's going to make a couple of adjustments, and then we are going to talk to Laura Johnson, who is here from the Pottstown School Board and is going to talk to us about fair funding. That's something that we have talked about a lot on the show. And
yes, you have.
I met you, Laura, on the bus.
Ah, yeah.
Right? I think that was the first.
I don't even remember the first time I met you.
I think that was the first time that we met.
That feels like
it feels like
a decade ago.
It feels like a year and a half ago. Guess what? It was a year and a half ago.
Yeah, it feels like a decade ago.
Yeah.
It feels like forever.
Yeah. Back when we could be on a bus.
Yeah. I just saw a picture today. I don't know if anybody saw the folks going onto the space station, the International Space Station, who had just gone up yesterday. They docked and they went in.
Right.
And there's all these people hugging each other, no masks, and I'm like, that just looks so weird to me. It's
right.
so
You're right. Oh, it's like when you watch a TV show.
You're like, why are they sitting so close together?
Right.
Yeah, it's like my whole brain is like.
I mean, they don't got to worry about the COVID up there on the space station.
They'd all quarantined.
Good for them.
All that.
Lucky for them.
Yeah.
Right.
Far, far away from Earth.
All right, folks. And Trinita was on the bus with us that one time.
Yeah, she was. She was like cheerleader captain of that bus.
Yes.
Complete with pom-poms.
Yes, it was fun. It was my very first political activist.
Yeah, it was mine too, I think. I don't think I had really been at a rally before that.
So were you on the school board at that time? No. You hadn't even gotten on to the school board?
I hadn't gotten on, and maybe I had decided to run by then. I don't even, that feels like a long time ago, but I had probably decided to run.
Right.
So... yeah, I had.
So, all right. Do we? Yes, 2020 seems like its own decade. You're right about that, Liz Yoder. It does.
It might be a little bit more clear now. That's about as much as I can do without getting to the point where we're going to get feedback.
All right. So. Well, I'm going to get right up on the mic, and hopefully that will be.
Yes. It's good. Your mom, so she can't hear you. She wants to hear you.
All right.
Your mom wants to hear you,
I know.
Amy.
Your mom wants to hear you. All the moms want to hear their own babies.
Laura,
is your mom tuned in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So you finally decided to join the school board. Is that what got you into the fair funding, or did the fair funding come
Fair
first?
funding was first. Okay. I got interested in that kind of gradually, but Kim Stillwell kind of roped me into that, a former school board member, and there were several different things that got me interested. But I think I'm sure you guys have seen the fair funding video. It's like a 10-minute long thing that explains how racially biased the funding is.
Yes.
That if there was any one thing, that was the thing, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago now, that was just are you kidding me?
Really eye-opening.
Really eye-opening. Right. And I just went down the rabbit hole.
Okay.
Right. Well, and we are glad that you did. Anybody that runs for school board and volunteers for school board is it's time consuming and it's really, really important. And you get a lot of heat and you get a lot of...
There are times.
Yes. So I thank you. And I know that this year especially has been very challenging.
Yeah, it was a crazy year to join.
Yeah, welcome to school board, and let's
December we got on school board, and then March we were shutting down and figuring out how to reopen.
So let's, Trinita says she's very proud of you.
Trinita is the best.
She is. She is a good cheerleader.
She is.
Miss you, Trinita. So let's talk about fair funding. So fair funding 101. So what does that mean when we say the fair funding formula, and that the fair funding formula is not fully employed, and what that means for districts like Pottstown? Give us a little nutshell.
Yeah. So the way I like to think about the fair funding is it's the state funding is like a pie. Every school district gets some of its money from local tax revenue,
right,
and from the state, and a little bit from maybe federal government, other resources. But in Pennsylvania, the amount that the state contributes is very low to begin with. It's a very small pie of a pot of money. It's thinking of it like this tiny little pie that we all have to share. And the fair funding formula is what tells us how to divide up the pie.
How big your slice is.
Right. And that's based on, and the fair funding formula was passed in 2016, and it's based on all kinds of factors. It's got student poverty levels are in that mix, how rural and sparsely populated a district is, English language learners, the local tax effort, local wealth are some of the biggest factors in that mix. And those all kind of helped say how much support does each school district need from the government? What is their share of the pie?
Right.
So they passed that formula, and they only applied it to money that was added to the funding, any enlargement of the pie after the formula passed. All the old money it's called hold harmless, and the money has to stay distributed that way, even if it's incredibly an unfair way. It doesn't matter. It's all like frozen in time. If your district got $40 million, even though the formula would say you should get $20 million, we're going to keep giving you that $40 million.
Right.
It doesn't increase.
So
it's a grandfather clause.
It is. That's exactly what it is.
All the way back to
early
exactly
Porchcast
and
episodes.
it's to not hurt the people who would otherwise lose money. They don't want to.
Even though the formula, with all of those factors that you talk about, would say, guess what? Things have changed in your district.
Right.
There's been an outflux of people. There's been an influx of people. There's been a change in wealth. There's been a change in poverty. Something has changed that you were getting $40 million before.
Yeah, maybe you needed it then.
Maybe you needed it then, but now the formula says you only really need 26. Yep. But you're still going to keep getting 40.
Absolutely. And that's like almost $6 billion is distributed through hold harmless money.
Wow.
Those districts might be banking. Like
some of them have pretty healthy reserves, from what I understand.
Reserves.
So $6 billion. That's
billion.
With a billion.
Yep, almost $6 billion
is not being
fairly
distributed.
Put back into the pot and distributed the right
exactly.
way.
It's frozen. So any new money is...
That is enormous amount of money.
So the pot is, or the pie is not big enough. Right, to begin with. So
there's
first
two,
of all, we have, is that locked? Would you mind getting that? Or can you, I'll get
it. Bill Brogley, locked out of his own office.
Sorry about that, folks.
William Paul Brogley.
So right now, the pie that the Pennsylvania education system gets from the state is like one of those little table talk, one of these little pies. Yeah. What we really need is one of those big Costco pumpkin pies that are like this big for $5. We need one of those big Costco pies.
Right.
So the amount of money going in from the state is not adequate.
Right. It's not even enough to begin with. Even the pie we're talking about, dividing it up fairly, it's a small pie.
Right.
Everybody actually probably needs at least as big of a slice as they're getting.
$6 billion, even though that sounds like that's an enormous.
It's hard to even fathom that amount of money.
Most people, my math brain, which is built on half of something, can't comprehend it.
No.
Right.
But I know just from common sense, that's a shit ton of money. Excuse my French.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're saying that even that money is not adequate.
Right.
Even the $6 billion is not an adequate sum.
So if we're talking about two things, so we talk about how the pie is divided. That's equity. That's everybody getting their fair share, the fair proportion of what is available.
Right.
But really, adequacy is saying making sure everybody's getting that the pie itself is big enough
to split up in the right way.
To split up so that now it's like saying it's the difference between saying to Pottstown, what's your fair share versus what do you need?
Right.
So if they actually, based on some of the reports I was reading this week, if they actually were funding education in Pennsylvania adequately, we need another $4.5 billion.
Across the entire state.
Across the state. We need to add it to the pie, and then the pie should be distributed fairly.
Right.
According to the formula, taking all those factors into consideration.
Yeah, so
and then
where would that money come from, right?
Yeah, that's the trouble. And right now, especially with COVID, whenever there's just complete, I would want to say almost complete panic about where the funds are going to come from just for the basic things.
Yeah.
Right. So things that fund, like, I don't know, does gambling fund education?
So gambling normally helps fund some education, but that crashed this year too. So that's a whole kind of a separate little side crisis going on, I think.
Right.
So
but gambling, fracking would be an area.
Well,
marijuana
as we know,
would be an area.
Fracking and extraction, there is no extraction tax in Pennsylvania.
Right.
We are the only state in the United States. There's 50 states, folks.
Right.
We are the only state in the United States of America that does not collect taxes off of extraction. Only one.
Yep.
Ridiculous.
Yep. So that's certainly a possible area. Now, anytime you talk about new funding, everybody wants a piece of that.
Sure, absolutely.
But right now there is a court case. It's going to be heard early next year. It's the William Penn lawsuit. If you've heard of that, it's like
I've not.
multiple
So
school districts,
yeah, okay.
Multiple families from those school districts, as well as Philadelphia, the state NAACP, a small and rural school association. All of these are being represented by, let me see if I can get this right, the Public Interest Law Center and the Education Law Center. I feel like I'm missing a word in there, but there's two different groups. I just watched a webinar today about that, and they were just talking about, they're talking about the equity, the fairness, they're talking about the adequacy, and they're basically going, it should be heard early this year or this coming year, basically saying that the way Pennsylvania is currently funding schools is unconstitutional and violates like equal protections.
Okay.
Because of how disproportionately it affects very poor students.
Right. Okay.
They go after more of the economic. They don't really directly hit on the race thing. But
no, and
if it gets the job done.
That was something that I was saying over the summertime too, on some of the earlier episodes of Porchcast, is even if you can't wrap your head around the racial issue, there's a lot of people out there that deny racism, they deny systemic racism, or they're just uncomfortable talking about it, right? So just take that off the table. I'm willing to take that off the table in order to open the conversation on this.
Right.
What we're really saying is that Pennsylvania children are not getting equal access to education.
Yeah, not by a long shot.
Even if you're a racist.
Right.
That should bother you because your little white kid
Yep.
isn't getting the same access as another little white kid someplace else.
Exactly. And we are the worst in the nation as far as our gap between our poor school districts and our wealthy ones.
Right.
Because even though the state isn't, providing a big enough pie, there are districts that are plenty wealthy and can give their students everything under the sun.
Right.
So there is a huge gap between, I'm trying to remember the school districts they used today. The other one was out west, but basically districts
we don't
want
to beat up on somebody.
Yeah, and I certainly wouldn't beat up on anyone super local, but there are districts that can do whatever they want for their kids because they have the local wealth to do it, which is great for them.
Right.
That's great for them. There are other districts who are spending half of what the other districts are spending on their students because they have nothing.
Right.
So...
And at the end of the day, we should want this better education because this is the future of our country, right? This is your future employees.
Yeah.
This is the person that's going to be taking care of you when you get older.
Exactly.
This is going to be the person that's driving the truck down 76 as you're commuting right next to him.
Right.
Would you rather have that person be educated or uneducated?
Yeah, or the people that are going to come in and do work on your house, or they're going to take care of you at the doctor's office or in the nursing home, or anything. We should.
And this was actually, there was an interesting argument that I heard against. I have never had anybody argue with me directly against my point of view that we should want everybody to have a better education because it helps society. It will help you. Well, I was on Laura's page, which I go on sometimes to find out what the pulse of the community is.
Right.
And a woman argued that she doesn't need her employees to be educated because she'll educate them when they come to work for her. But here's my rebuttal to that. It's the rebuttal that I would have made. I did not.
Right.
I left it alone.
Right.
That really what you're saying then is that you in your business are not willing or not interested in innovation, because education in the basics, science, math, reading, the basics, it's been shown time and time again that increase in knowledge also helps innovate and innovation.
Right.
So basically what that woman's saying is, I like things just the way they are. I don't want anything to change, and I don't need an innovative workforce, or I don't want to innovate. I just need an obedient workforce that's going to do what I tell them to do.
Also, what she's saying is that I don't want to pay for educated employees. I'd rather have an uneducated employee who I can pay less money to.
There's probably that part of it too.
And train them in the way that I want to train them. I don't want to have to unlearn.
It's short-term thinking.
Yeah, it really
It's
is.
I mean, across the board,
Yes.
with Pennsylvania being so slow to want to fund public education well, it's that sense of like, it doesn't work for now. It doesn't help me get reelected.
Right.
It doesn't feel good to ever tax more. Everybody understands that, but
Right.
it's such limited. Like, it's not thinking about what this means for these children growing up into being adults.
Yeah.
And it should be obvious, but
It's not.
humans don't think long term very well.
Right.
So let's. I don't want to drag you away from what you came here to do, which is to tell us about. There are some efforts that you and other people are making, and tell us about what you're doing in order to try to address the situation. How could somebody, for instance, get involved or get a better understanding of what it is you're trying to do, so that they can apply pressure to their school board, state representative, et cetera, on to get this fixed?
So there's a couple ways, and depending on how deeply involved people want to get, you can go deeper and deeper. But for starters, for one thing, there's a local Pottstown advocacy page that's more just anything related to Pottstown advocacy, advocates for Pottstown schools.
And I have the logo for that page up on right now.
And so that one's great. I mean, if you're local, that's a great one to follow. And I try to post about, there's other things besides fair funding. There's charter school issues, and there's other people will use it to post stuff about our school district, like whatever they want to advocate for. And I pretty much leave whatever up there as long as it's in that realm.
Gotcha.
But there's also one called Pennsylvanians for Fair Funding, and that's kind of been the bigger focus lately. And that's a Facebook group as well, but it's also we started a website, still under construction, but we have really tried to use social media to get some of that going.
Right.
As a way to get people aware of the issue. I mean, we've had some people who've worked on just some different data to help show the difference between districts. Again, not really trying to go after districts who are getting more than their fair share, but just to help show like communities of color, they're disproportionately impacted.
Right.
Like that's just what it is. And so we've put together some different graphics with that and just trying to get the word out more broadly. Like broad education is like definitely one of the pillars of the strategy right now, just because there's tons of people who don't know.
Right.
So yeah, that definitely is like step one to get involved.
Okay. Learn about the issue.
Learn, follow, and you can do some like social media activism, and that actually, especially on Twitter, matters. Like it actually is meaningful to get on there and to tweet at your legislators, for example, about how this is an important issue.
Right. So even for people that don't have kids, school age kids, why is this important? Well,
I was going to say, kind of like we were talking about.
Right. So why there are things, Pennsylvania is 47th in the nation or whatever the number is.
Yeah, it depends on what metric you use. We're the worst or we're the 47th.
So
it's pretty bad either way.
We're at the bottom of the pile,
Yeah,
no matter how you
it ain't
cut
proud.
it.
It's not something to be proud of. And so as a business person who is trying to sell real estate, that is going to impact people wanting to move into the state. Because
Absolutely.
they're looking at those education numbers. The schools are not great in Pennsylvania. The schools are not good in Pottstown. Like, how many times have we talked about this on Porchcast?
I'll take it in another direction too, and it goes back to this business innovation. You can see in states where they have made education a priority or funding for education up into the college and university level, those states are seen as being innovative states. They're innovators.
Right.
And people want to move their businesses there. They want to go and do business because they know that they'll find a labor force that can do the work.
Right.
It's less expensive for the employer to train somebody if they already have the knowledge coming in.
Right.
And an educated workforce is an innovative workforce.
Yes. And that was one of the things I talked about at the ULI study was about job readiness and training and having kids come out.
Being ready to go right out of the box.
Right.
So, I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to the residential stuff, for sure.
Right.
Right? People want to live in a state, in a school district, in an area where the schools are good.
Right. And they also don't want to be the school taxes
Uh-huh.
are a deterrent. I mean,
Right.
Matt,
Right.
in your business, how
they-
often do you see that?
All the time.
Right.
All the time.
Right.
Yep.
But I would also say on the commercial side of things too, businesses also want to come into communities where there is a well-educated workforce, whether
Right.
that's a blue-collar workforce up to a workforce that requires college
Right, but
or
they want to
beyond.
know that there's going to be right pickings for employees, regardless of whatever
That's
kind
correct.
of business that they're,
Right.
That's
they're
correct.
running. Right.
So
Yeah, so you don't
Anyway.
have to have kids in the school district for this to be
no.
a
I mean, the tax
concern.
side alone, even if you're not a business owner,
right.
the taxes here are horrendous.
Right.
I mean, they're like
comparative to the
again, we're at the bottom of the pile
well,
in the
comparative
state.
to the value of the real estate.
Right. The tax burden is
Yes.
the way they often talk about it.
Yeah.
Is we depending on how you slice it, we're like the 17th worst in the state or the 6th worst in the state, and in terms of proportion, like in terms of the percentage.
Yes.
So that's definitely a huge problem too. And the reason that is because if the state doesn't properly fund us, and yet we have these things we need to offer our students,
Yes. There's
there's
mandated.
nowhere else to go.
So that's the thing too, that the state loves to send down mandates,
Oh,
but without funding.
Yes. Oh, they love to. They love
Right.
to. And every time I hear something come up in Harrisburg, even the good ideas, I'm like, I cringe a little
yeah,
inside
but
because
no.
I'm
How are we-
like,
how
I
are we
like
gonna-
it,
how are we
but
gonna
how
pay
are you
for it?
going to pay?
How are we gonna pay for
Harrisburg,
that?
are you going to send us the money to do this?
Right.
Or are you just going to tell us we have to now?
We have to do it so that then we
and
can,
do the paperwork to show you that we do it.
right.
So
Yeah.
it's just, it's
Yeah,
just,
and that's when you see things like art and music and pre-K
Mhm.
on the chopping block, because there's all these mandates that come
Yeah.
down without funding.
right. So we have to look at what
What's gonna
what are we
cut?
not mandated to do, and often those are the things that, I mean, certainly I just thinking of like art and music, those are the things that honestly a lot of kids, that's what makes kids like school.
Right.
Like those are when you start just taking away everything that's not mandated, nobody wants to do that. That's not going to serve anybody at all.
Right.
Deb Penrod just posted up a link to a video that Laura talked about earlier. It's a webcast that happened today.
Oh yeah, totally worth watching.
Okay. You want to give us a little summary of that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's about the
or is it
lawsuit
more
that
along? Okay.
it's
That's
about
about
that
the William Penn
lawsuit, and
lawsuit? Okay.
they unpack where they're at in the case and what will happen if they win. Basically, the legislature's still going to be like, the court is going to tell the legislator, you got to fix this. And we
Right.
hope that's what they tell them. If they tell them, it's fine, then we don't
Back
even
to
have that to
square
lean
one.
on.
Right.
But if they do that, then the legislature is on the hook to figure out a way to fix it, but they still have to come up with the details. It's not like the court is likely to
No.
say
no
how
court,
to fix it.
Oh
No
yeah, they're not
courts-
going to
no,
give them a
courts don't do
blueprint
that.
for it.
No.
Sure.
No. So that will help the effort. And one of the things they talked about in that webinar was, even though this is happening in court, the public education side of it, not public education in terms of funding it, but the educating the public about the
Yes.
issue is still crucial, because if the legislators have that pressure from their constituents, they're
Right.
more likely to take it and actually do something meaningful with it.
Right.
So it was a good webinar. It's worth
that-
watching.
So putting the pressure on our congresspeople, our state congresspeople,
Yes.
is where we can also.
Exactly. That's kind of like the second pillar in terms of like what we're doing.
Right.
Like it's so, yes, widespread education about the issue,
Right.
and then figuring out specific ways to advocate to our legislators about how, like, that it needs to be fixed. So for the past 2 years, there were specific bills we would tell them to co-sponsor. Obviously, we're at the end of that session and nothing got done. So
Right.
I don't know if we will pivot the approach that we take this time or not. I assume that there will be some pivots. There might just be kind of shotgun approach too. But one way or another, there needs to be the pressure there for them to actually do it. And
Well, I mean, on some level, they were feeling the pressure because they actually rewrote the rules, the policies on how people can protest at the Capitol,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Because
rally-
of the fair funding rally, these people who don't want to do anything about it heard it, and they don't want to hear it.
it was
So what did they
an
do?
overwhelming number of people. So they said you can't bring that many people anymore. They made a new rule.
From the one that we went to.
Yeah, the one we went to had like well over 1,000 people
I was
there,
there.
which was overwhelming.
Yes.
And
It
then
was
later
pretty
in the summer,
overwhelming.
they passed a rule that said there can't be any more than 450 people in that area for a protest. You have to do it outside.
Right.
So I was proud of that.
Yeah.
No, that's something to be proud of.
I thought we did
You
really
never
good with
changed
that.
the rules.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, even though they don't want to hear it, they're hearing it.
Oh, they are.
If they had to go back and rewrite the rules, that means that they
Yes.
heard it.
Yep.
They just didn't like what they hear.
No, they did. They
Right.
don't like it, but that obviously that's a.
And you did it without even. You didn't even take any AK-47s with you. Holy smokes! maybe next time take a couple guns.
Yeah, maybe looked at.
Yeah, I think we'll
Seems
stick
to
to
work.
Look at
stick
Michigan.
to
Look at
peaceful.
Michigan and see how they get stuff done over there. So
no
you may have-
taking our clue
I'm-
from
I know,
Michigan.
I'm
So,
just,
no,
I'm just
I
We're
know.
joking.
adding a little controversy to the show. Keep
so
people's
I
attention.
do that sometimes too. I get it. I
So,
totally get it.
You may have legislators that are beholden to their constituents. They've got constituents. They've got districts within their area
Yes.
that are benefiting from hold harmless
Mm-hmm.
and suffering from the lack of fair funding.
Mm-hmm.
So how do those legislators how do they manage that?
I would say that in most cases they manage it by not acknowledging it very much. I mean,
they gotta
some people
try
will
to-
give lip service to
Yeah.
we need to deal with that, and then not really do much with it. And there are some who, even though it will disadvantage some of their districts, actually take a really good stand on the issue. Joe Cerisi, certainly. I don't know. He represents Springford. I don't know if he actually represents any districts that are getting more than their fair share, but he's been very, very strong on that issue.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of folks out there who just see it as kind of not their problem. Like, we'll wait and see how the court case goes and figure it out. Like, kind of almost wait till their hand is forced.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Which
it's
is a
tough.
way.
It's-
Which is a way to kick. It kicks the can down the road.
It does.
Sure. I'm not going to do anything until I'm forced to do something legally.
Yeah.
Right.
I keep saying this, and I've posted this a couple of different places on social media. If you follow me, you've probably seen me say this. Is that moving forward, I'm just going to be a little bit more vocal about some of the issues that I agree in. I think. Or want to see happen. In the past, maybe I've not said certain things for different reasons, various different reasons. Sometimes just not wanting to offend other people, or thinking that what I say might cause me to lose business or something like that. But I'm just going to be more vocal about it. You know what I mean? And just apply some
really,
pressure.
On this issue, I don't see how anybody could be against this.
Well,
You know,
because they see it as a way. I think overall, people, what I see, the pushback to it, and tell me if you're seeing the same thing. The pushback to it is that a lot of people out there who are upset with schools and spending on schools don't want to spend that money, period.
Right.
So when they see that schools, any school, is going to get more money, they see that as an increase in their
It's
taxes.
coming right out of their
And
pocket.
if you're going to increase
Right.
my taxes, and I don't want to work in your
I'm not
community,
for it.
I don't want to open a business in your community,
Right.
I just want that money back in my pocket to do what I want to do with it.
Right.
It's completely, as Laura said earlier, self-centered and short-sighted thinking.
Right. Right.
Without any ability to creatively think about, okay, there is a problem here. How do we address the problem?
Right.
The problem, the only problem for them is, I just want my dollars back. I don't care what happens with education in the long run. I
Right.
just want
I'm
my
done.
dollars.
My kids are through school.
I
I'm done.
just want
I don't
my
care about
dollars
this
back.
Or
anymore.
people don't believe
Right.
that money matters.
Right.
Well,
Which isn't
it's just,
true.
you know, when I think about our kids in Pottstown and they what they could do, our kids are great, and our teachers are warriors. Our teachers
Absolutely.
are total warriors. They are like
Sure.
Peace Corps volunteers. They're going out into the trenches, doing really hard
No,
work.
they do actually deal with some stuff that you would see in a third world
Right,
country.
but-
That's true.
but they
It's
really-
unfortunately true.
I'm just saying that they do a lot with a little, and they do a lot,
Right.
of their own, bring their own money in and work on their own time and their own money.
What could they do
What
if?
could they do, and what could
Oh
our
my
kids?
goodness.
Our kids are really scrappy and resourceful, and they have a certain Pottstown School District has a
Chutzpah.
certain, and they really they're gritty.
Yeah.
you know?
They're gritty.
So,
They're gritty.
So what would they be able to do if they if they all had Chromebooks at the start of COVID,
right,
stay at
right,
home.
or if they had
everybody would,
a
hit the
similar
ground-
number of AP courses as their neighboring school districts,
right.
we have
or
a
just if they
half.
hit the ground running once COVID
Yep.
hit, and they were already prepared to do that. What
Right.
would that have looked like? And I just think about what they could do. They're already great. Our school, our kids, and our teachers are already amazing, and what they could do if they were properly funded.
Right.
So here
Right.
we have a question coming in
Right.
from Joe Rusevich, and he wants to know who are some of the legislators that are proponents of this issue. So who have you been working with success?
Joe Cerisi,
Joe Cerisi.
obviously. Chris Rabb is a representative from the Philly area.
Philly.
He's the one who put forward the bill that we kept promoting last year, HB 961, which is pretty much done now because we're in a new legislative session. But there's a lot. I mean, obviously, Joe is the big one locally who I would point to as being,
Right.
super helpful with that.
Yep.
And then Joe also mentioned that he had done some work with a woman or a legislator from Greene County.
Okay.
So I don't remember what her name was.
Okay, I was going to
but,
say, I know I some of the names who are on the education committee I got really familiar with, especially the ones who were co-sponsors or not. We were kind of used to taking that as a strategy to reach out to them specifically, but I don't know if that would be.
Susie Marcucci Kennedy
Hi,
is
Susie.
saying, besides contacting our legislators, what can residents of Pottstown do to help with this situation?
Well, so we have groups now that are meeting. So one of the things that we did, I'm going to circle to that. We started meeting with school board members from across the state, kind of trying to get people who are on some level peers in a certain way, operating and thinking together. So we've been organizing on that level. There have been teachers who have been, working more on this issue. If there are people in the community who are either coming at it from a taxpayer angle or a parent angle, potentially what we can do is we can form new groups. And what those groups will do, because we already have parents who want to be involved, where those groups can think, what do we as parents, what can we specifically speak to this issue? How can we write op-eds? How could we stage a protest? How could we, thinking very creatively along those specific lines. So depending on what kind of group or constituent base that person is in, might help to determine more. But I mean, certainly anybody can write an op-ed or a letter to the editor.
Sure.
Anybody can regularly call their representative and remind them that they really care about this issue, because honestly, the more people we have doing that, that's a big one to keep it on their radar.
So basically,
Exactly.
what you're talking about is something else that we've talked about on the show, and something that I personally have some experience with is what you could do, or what somebody could get involved in, is either developing or participating in some of these listening sessions. And then from there, using that information that's gathered in the listening session, or organizing a listening session, and then use that information to help kind of support the cause and give information and facts, data to the cause, so to speak.
Right.
So it's very similar to what we talked about on the show with Pottstown Community Action, where we talked about this block captain theory and about organizing people from your neighborhood to specifically address the issues that are impacting your little slice of Pottstown.
Yep.
So that's basically what you're doing.
That's right.
So if you're a senior citizen, there could be a way for advocacy for senior citizens.
Absolutely.
If you're if you have kids in school, there's a way to get. So,
or even along the lines of what your career is. Certain careers, real estate, for example, would be like real estate folks who are interested in this issue and can speak to it specifically from that angle.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I mean, you could go a million directions, but basically one of the things that we've been trying to do is help facilitate, if people are wanting to do that and kind of dive into that, we can help so that all of our groups are coordinating, because that's something we've been putting a lot of effort into, is even outside of the Pennsylvanians for Fair Funding group, connecting with Power, connecting with some of these other groups, so that we're kind of pulling them in the same direction, and we're aware of the strategies, because that, can really help, increase the tension, increase the pressure on them.
And that's at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. You know what I mean? That this isn't an issue where you can go. I mean, well, sure, you could pack lunches for the people that are going to the protest, but it's not like it's not like there's some hands-on work that you can go and do down at the end of your block. It's really going to require political action, political pressure of one way, shape, or form.
Voicing whether it's through your voice or through your social media posts or writing a letter or calling your legislator. Yeah.
We also have Monique Herbert is asking that, and we did talk about this earlier, but it can't hurt to go back over it, is the other avenues of revenue in the state. So the biggest one that always comes back to me, you talked about it when we had Paul Friel on the show, he talked about it, was the fact that Pennsylvania is the only state in the United States of America that does not have an extraction tax for fossil fuels. So all the fracking...
why is that? Some lobby, right?
It's because Corbett, let's get it straight, it's because our former governor fought that off. And then as soon as he was out of the governorship, went on a speaking tour to the fossil fuel industry where he was paid $10,000, $20,000, and $30,000 a speech to the fossil fuel industry. That's why we don't have an extraction tax, because Tom Corbett needed a way to monopolize his time in governorship. The period. That's not an opinion. It's an established fact.
There would need to be a really strong lobby. For taxing the extraction.
It would have to be. It would have to be a two-pronged thing, not just.
So who's gonna pay that lobbyist? Who's got deep enough pockets to pay a lobbyist?
The fossil fuel industry.
The other side, though, is if the court case came back that you have to fix this. That would help put that pressure on it.
So they'd be like, all right, where can we get some money? We can tax the extraction. We can legalize weed. We can, there's a handful
they could legalize weed for recreational purposes.
For
marijuana is legal
it's
in
already medically approved, but
what's happening to the taxes for medical marijuana? I mean, the stuff's being taxed. Where's that going? You know, and then look at the states that have recreational marijuana. In the first couple of months, I think in Colorado, they were making millions. There was so much money, they didn't even know what to do with it all.
Right.
Oh, man.
Let's get some of that up here in this John.
So Monique, there's your answer. We have there's two industries that are currently operating in Pennsylvania right now that we could create revenue from. That's the extraction of gas and oil and coal, and the marijuana.
Yeah. And maybe, is there something to do in the Pennsylvania liquor control? Privatize that? They privatize the liquor.
I have heard them talk about
that.
They have talked about that. Yeah.
I don't know. I've never kind of taken the dive into that one to know how much money there is there. But there are options. It's just that it's hard.
And to keep like Monique says, to keep going into the pockets of the taxpayers, you can't keep doing that. There's just not enough money there to make a $6 billion increase or whatever that number is that we need to make that pie this big. Right.
Yeah. We're going to have to find some way. And listen,
fracking and weed. Fracking and weed.
Well, education's huge. And listen, I'm not taking anything away from the conversation here. It's a super important conversation. But we also have other issues that we could talk about. Look at right now in Pottstown, the King Street Bridge is shut down because that bridge is so old and so out of date and so dangerous. It's been that way for years, folks. It's not new. It's just that they finally have the money to do something about it. We have crumbling infrastructure in Pennsylvania. Just as bad as we are ranked in education, we're almost equally badly ranked in roadways and bridges. We have some of the worst roads and bridges in the country.
Well, I think that's also a function of how long they've been around. Anytime you've got really old, how long did it take them to do the big dig up in Boston?
Right.
They had to repair all of that. It took 6 years.
Well, and there was some engineering mistakes that went into that too.
Right.
My point is, education's not the only serious issue
Right.
that we have to find funding for. So
Right.
there's a struggle, there's a political struggle that Laura's alluding to, which is going to require people to
Right.
pick an issue or two and continuously apply the pressure.
Let's also talk about the amount of property in Pottstown that is not on the tax rolls.
We do have an issue.
Right, so we have an issue with
churches
that.
and nonprofits.
Churches and nonprofits, and every time there's another property that is going up for approval for another nonprofit, like it just takes it off the tax rolls, and it decreases that pot
Right.
It does.
of
Yeah,
tax money.
Yeah, it decreases that
Right?
local.
Maybe
like,
maybe the hospital will like sell back to a private.
When yeah.
Well, I mean,
that
that's
thought went through my
Wouldn't that
mind
be
when
great?
I saw
was that the first? That's
I
the
was
first thing you
like,
think
huh.
of, right? Yeah.
there has to be some restructuring. I mean, that kind of is a local issue, but it also goes to the way the laws are written, right? That we don't tax churches and nonprofits,
Right.
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 If there's certain people out there on social media land that are constantly crying for, they want to tax churches.
Right.
If churches have some ability to wield political pressure, which we see that they do,
Yeah.
maybe they need to pay some taxes for that.
Right. And the
Maybe there's an argument to be said for that.
the voluntary pilot the payment in lieu of taxes, like some nonprofits will make a voluntary, but it's just a sliver of what they would
otherwise
yeah,
pay.
Right.
There's the
Right,
honorarium.
so maybe there's not, maybe nonprofits are not taxed at the same rate as a private property is.
Right.
But even if they were taxed at, if you were
That's
getting
always-
10%
Yeah.
or whatever, it would be helpful.
I mean, having this so we've kind of diverted a little
sorry
bit.
sorry
No,
for
I-
any
no, I just
churches and
wanna-
nonprofits out there, but
No,
you know,
we do, and I think
It's an interesting conversation.
it's what, and
right.
I think there are more and more. It's stuff that needs to be had.
Sure.
I think one of the most interesting things that I see and have seen when it comes to nonprofit is the marriage between nonprofit and for-profit. So, teaming up some of these nonprofits with businesses that can generate a profit to go back. So, for instance, there was a study that was done out in Minnesota, and they used a brewery. So, what happened was they got this brewery up and running. The students that were studying biology and chemistry and brewing sciences got their lab experience working in the brewery.
is that a major? Brewing sciences?
Yeah, it is.
It is?
Fermentation sciences.
Wow.
Yeah. Zimmergy.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, anyway, sorry. I was like, that
So-
sounds like a
That
fun major,
does
right?
sound like fun.
Well,
one.
there's industrial
there's
there's
probably
industrial applications
Yeah.
for fermentation
There's
too.
probably a lot of chemistry. I would be really bad at that.
So anyway, what they did was they used this brew pub in order to get the students laboratory hands-on working experience, and then also they sold the beer from the brew pub to help support local nonprofits.
Right.
That's
so
cool.
There's something to be said that maybe we need to do a little bit outside of the box thinking on how we're actually supporting these nonprofits.
Right. And
There
nonprofit
might
doesn't
be
have to
revenue
mean
streams.
poor. It doesn't have to. Nonprofit doesn't have to mean poor.
No, it does
It
not.
doesn't have to mean shoestring budget.
No,
It doesn't
it
have
doesn't.
to. Right.
So maybe there's some ways to rethink some of that stuff that could potentially alleviate the tax burden that's placing.
Right.
That's the only thing I'm saying, because I know there's a couple social justice warriors out there that are probably gonna beat me up on my way to my car. How dare you attack nonprofits?
Well, no, we're not attacking nonprofits. We're just attacking maybe how much of our real estate in Pottstown is allocated to non-property tax paying entities.
University of Pennsylvania just pledged $100 million to Philly schools
I
over
saw
10
that.
years. Big deal.
I did see that.
Supposedly, since they are a nonprofit. Yeah, big deal for them for all they take from Philly. So Deb's being a little facetious there. So I mean, you have some good questions here. I think we answered the questions. The question that I have for you, and this kind of circles back to our off-air conversation that we kind of brought into the beginning of the show, and this is for you personally. How do you stay motivated to tackle this stuff? I mean, this is a big issue for us. It's monumental. And I'm sure that you can feel like at times you're pushing a boulder up a hill. It's got to be exhausting.
Yeah.
Where do you find the strength to keep going with what you're doing?
That is an interesting question. So, I mean, one way of thinking about it is like, if you've ever had something where you're like, I can't not do this. Like, it's just,
okay.
It's in me. Like, it's almost like if you think of it in terms of calling, like, it's just, I would be, yes, it's tiring at times. And it does take a lot of time, energy, everything, but it's like, I guess, I don't know. It's something worth fighting for. And it's something I feel very much like a drive inside to fight for.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, I think when I realized how serious the issue was and what an incredible, like how incredibly unjust it was.
Yeah.
And to see it along racial terms and to live in a town that's so affected by it, it just, I don't know, lit like a fire that won't go out.
It made a sandwich that you just couldn't not try to take a bite out.
Exactly. And the sandwich is endless, it seems, but eventually we'll get there. So, I don't know. It's just a drive. I don't know.
So then, what pops into my mind, and maybe this answers somebody else's question from earlier, how they can get involved. Maybe what you do is you reach out to Laura Johnson on Facebook Messenger and buy the woman a beer. Take her out to dinner.
No, you're getting lots of love over
Give
here.
her a pat on the back and say, thanks for all your hard work.
Well, and
on
so we
some
have
level,
we have
that's helping the cause, right?
Sure. If you want to send me beer, I will.
Do you want one? Bill Brogley brought us some.
I love beer.
So the first thing you can do is follow the Advocates for Pottstown Schools Facebook page.
If you're local, and I know pretty much everybody who's listening is, other than who will see this on the Pennsylvania page.
Right.
Totally.
So follow that advocacy page, right?
Yep. And I do action items on these pages. So those pages aren't just educational. A lot of times, especially during session, I haven't done as many lately. It's like, call this person and tell them this.
So there will be scripts. Like, here's what you can call your legislator and say. Here are the words. You don't even need to think about it. You can just use these words. We're gonna script it for you. So that's something that you can do, and you can do that. Yeah, every single day.
And we have workshops too.
Yeah.
We have workshops that we have done in the past that are like educational, but I'm also going to do some that are like how to meet with your legislator. Like, because I think for a lot of people, it's like, I feel really uncomfortable even calling. I don't know what to say. I'm afraid of sounding stupid. It just makes people anxious. And it's the kind of thing that if you do it more and more, you don't care anymore.
Yeah, it becomes more comfortable. Well, and especially if you have a rep, somebody like Joe Cerisi, he's so approachable. And he's so open and
often he will not be the one I'm telling you to call though, because he's already on board. I'm telling you to call somebody else who might be a little bit less helpful on the issue.
Save your breath from the you don't have to worry about Joe. We know that Joe's on our side.
Right. But the reality is every person in Harrisburg works for us. Like if you start approaching it like, you're there to represent me. So I feel very comfortable calling you up and telling you that you need to support this and this is why it's important or whatever.
Right.
It can help.
That person has some of your dollars in their hands.
Exactly.
Tell them how you want them to spend your money.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. I have told people this because I've not necessarily on this issue. This issue is important. It's just not one that I have personally taken on. I believe there's a long list of stuff. But on another issue, I was talking to somebody that said that they were super anxious about making a phone call. I don't like talking on the phone. It makes me anxious, regardless of who I'm talking to. I just don't want to do it.
Right.
So I suggested to that person, look, go write a letter.
Yep.
If you can't talk, write a letter. And there's like Laura, like Amy is saying,
we'll give you the talking
there's
points.
Templates. All you have to do is maybe personalize it a little bit for yourself, print it out, sign it, send it.
Buy a stamp. You can help the Postal Service.
Yeah.
That's a win-win.
Yeah.
Right? That's a win-win. Yeah.
So, I mean, there is a way to get involved if you're not outspoken. But But if you do have the gumption to go and do it, talk to your whoever it is.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But at the very least, you'll have that feedback. I mean, I've certainly talked to politicians, especially some of our local ones, and I've heard things back from them that I don't like or agree with.
Right.
But at least I now know where I stand. Yep. At least I can then go back to the drawing board and maybe find another way to attack the problem that they will see eye to eye with what I have to say.
Right.
Or maybe I'll just go and do something to force them to do what I want to do.
Yeah, and
that would
if
be
it's
fun
an elected leader,
I'd be on board
that's
with
fun
that.
Sometimes
Yeah,
too.
I mean, one of our most watched episodes was when we had Paul Friel on, and we were all rooting for Paul to, get some new blood there in that district, and hopefully he will
run again.
Yeah.
But listen, at the end of the day, the fact that
race
was so close.
Yeah.
That should send a message to his opponent.
Right.
That I better start doing something.
Right.
It also should send a message to Paul Friel that over the next 2 years, if he gets out and actually starts doing some of the stuff that he talked about doing,
right,
or helping the rest of us do it,
yeah,
he's got a good chance of winning it in 2 years.
Right.
Speaking of helping the rest of us do it, you want some breaking news?
Oh, breaking news.
Breaking news on Porchcast. Breaking news on Porchcast.
Breaking news. What's the breaking news?
The breaking news.
We just like to make the breaking news sound.
Oh, yeah. So Paul Friel is doing something awesome right now. He is donating $1,500 of his campaign money to Pennsylvanians for Fair Funding.
Nice.
Up until today, we didn't even have a way to get money.
Right.
But Pottstown Area Health and Wellness Foundation is setting up a donor-advised fund for us, so that we can receive funds and we can spend them on education about this issue.
Great.
So Paul is
very generous. Thank you, Paul.
Yes.
If you're watching, thank you very much.
I was thrilled. That's going to be that money will go a long way.
And
he already has funded those yard signs. If you've seen that, was funded by Paul's campaign as well.
Amy Morazes, who is not here with us today, she had another commitment, but she's tuning in. She said found sending Facebook messages was very helpful this past year. Was that to your legislators, Aim? Is that who you were sending Facebook messages to? Yeah, just bombard them. Right?
Paul Friel is listening. Thanks
Facebook
for tuning in,
Paul. Twitter, because it's public. Twitter is a great way to do it.
And now due to some lawsuits, they can't ban you. I got banned. I didn't get banned. I was not a ban. Toomey blocked me.
You got okay.
Did he?
Yeah, I created a hashtag Toomey for sale, which kind of started catching on.
Okay.
And I can't post anything on now. Maybe I can, but yes, for a while I was blocked from Toomey's.
Well done, sir.
It's It's actually one of my pride and joys in my political career.
Yeah,
I got blocked for creating that. So it's Toomey, the number 4, the word
I've
sale.
seen that one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I am not. I don't really use Twitter. I don't really know how to use it. I'm feeling like a little bit like an old lady in that way, that I don't really understand it, and I don't use it. So I when you say it's public, it's so
it's like,
as opposed to sending a private Facebook message.
Yeah, or
to somebody?
even like my Facebook is set that normally when I post, it's only my friends that see it, which is plenty of people.
Sure.
But it's still not the same as like a person to person message. But you can also set Facebook to be public, so anybody who would get on Facebook and go to my profile could see it.
Right.
Twitter is all like that normally.
Okay.
There are some more restrictive settings that some people will put on, but the kind of the default is that it's visible to everyone. So when I go on Twitter and I want to tag a local legislator, I'll just use Joe Cerisi. At Joe Cerisi, it was great meeting with you today. Thanks for all your help with whatever. So everybody sees that. All of his people who are following him see that.
Right.
All of my people and anybody else I tag, which you'll notice people tag a lot of people.
Right.
So that the message gets out there more.
Got it.
And so that's really great for media. Like if you're tweeting about fair funding and I tag the Department of Education and I tag, our superintendent and I tag John Armato, who will probably tweet it out to everybody, it makes it so much more visible so that every one of these folks will see that they're tagged and their people see it. So it's a really public way of
spiders out a lot.
Yep. You can use it
wider.
To give people a pat on the back. You can use it to be like, hey, you need to do better. You can use it in all of those ways.
But you can also use it to spread the word about Porchcast Pottstown.
Oh, right. So I'm like, maybe I need to get on the program.
No, the keyboard warriors, I think do have a role to play in all of this. I don't think that we can get away from or lessen the pressure on these other types of advocacy as well.
I agree.
We can't just rely on social media to try to fix these problems. It's an excellent tool to get the word out and everything else, but there's nothing better than standing face to face with somebody. There's nothing better than showing up in somebody's office. There's nothing better than a politician having to receive literally boxes full of mail on an issue.
Right.
That's some tangible stuff that can't just be laughed off as, it's just some trolls on social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Some of the co-sponsors
this is somebody took the time to write a letter and put a stamp on it. And send it.
Absolutely. But face-to-face meetings, more than anything, a couple of our co-sponsors, especially local ones who were not on board for co-sponsoring before, and I will say, Paula Corson at the NAACP has been my partner for reaching out to some of these folks to go and either sit down, or even if it was Zoom, to sit down and be like, you need to co-sponsor this, and here's why.
Yeah.
And yes, we understand it's an uphill battle. You can, you can kind of square with people a little better then.
Right. But
to then be like, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And we got yeses both times that we did it with local people. And it seemed to partly be that 1 to 1 or whatever, 2 to 1, or actually in the one case, it was 3 to 1. Like, why would you not do this?
Yeah.
It's fair. It benefits your districts. It's, all the reasons. And I think that it's harder to say no to someone. It's easy to say no to a tweet because, like you said, the trolls and
it's easy to a letter and to just
even
say,
or even an email or even a phone call, because normally
Right.
it's not the legislator that gets the phone call. It's I'll pass it on to them. Thank you.
Right.
Still matters. I don't want to downplay that.
Right.
But to meet with somebody in person is huge, especially if you're their constituent.
Sure. Of
So,
course.
Yeah.
Yep. Getting on that and getting on the loud motorcycle issue. Although I think the loud motorcycle issue is starting to calm down now that the weather is getting colder.
It's going to change now with the weather.
Yes, it doesn't seem quite as loud. It is, it's 6 o'clock.
It is 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Do you have some news?
I do have just a couple of things. Tomorrow night, which is the 18th, TCN, our friends over at TCN, are at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. They're doing an online hunger and homelessness awareness fundraiser. So you can go to the Tri-County Community Network Facebook page, or they have a YouTube channel, and watch their awareness fundraiser. So that's tomorrow at 7. And hunger and homelessness is something that we think about more now that Thanksgiving is coming up. That's usually a time that people really start to think about that.
And 2 people who you know pretty well were called up to be technical advisors to them. Matt Green and Amy Morazes.
Okay, are you going to be working on that?
No, we're not working on it. They called us for advice.
Okay.
Which we gave.
Do you find that to be slightly hilarious?
I do.
Right. I mean, not for Amy, because that's what she does for a living, but,
for me, yeah.
Come a long way, Bubby.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of Porchcast influence there. Just want to mention that up, because I have no problem blowing my own horn.
Listen, you come a long way. Look at you back there behind the controls. I don't even know where all the wires go. Dave Charles, are you still on here? I'm wondering if
David's amazing.
Still, if there are still tickets for Selma on Sunday night. So that's the rescheduled drive-in movie. Selma, presented by the Strive Initiative. That is at the Sunnybrook Drive-In on Sunday the 22nd at 6:30. So you can go to Strive Initiative Facebook page, and there's the link. It is free. But you do need to register. So there's going to be some virtual discussion surrounding the movie. So I am looking forward to that. I hope the weather holds out.
Yes,
please.
me too.
Hold on. I got to read what Deb says here. One action I took. I talked to Mr. Hennessy, who was behind me in line at the wine and spirits store. Some opportunities just pop up.
Yeah. Yes.
Good job.
Take those
Deb.
opportunities
Take those
whenever they
opportunities
present
when you
You
have
had
themselves.
them.
them
Yes.
cornered at the liquor store. That's great.
That's awesome.
So some new COVID-related restrictions came out of the state today. There was a press conference earlier this afternoon.
It was at 1 o'clock.
Yes. So pay attention to those. If you are traveling outside of Pennsylvania and then you are coming back into Pennsylvania, you will need to take certain steps. You either need to get a negative COVID test within 72 hours of returning, or when you get back into the state, you need to quarantine for 14 days. So
Okay.
if you plan on going someplace, don't be coming back in here spreading other states' COVID germs
Right.
around.
So here's a piece of news that I do want to share with people, and I'm not pointing any fingers on where I saw this, but her
Okay.
initials are Laura Johnson.
Okay.
On her Facebook page, there was some people asking about the tests, and I think you put it out. What are you going to do for Thanksgiving? That was your question.
Yes, because I was curious about if anybody was going to like great lengths
Yeah,
to do something, because I know that there's lots of people who are just going to do the normal
they're
thing.
going to do whatever they want.
And there's other people who will do nothing.
Yeah.
I was kind of curious about those folks who are like, okay, we really need to meet with someone or with our family. We're going to have it outdoors. And I had heard on the news some people were asking their whole family to get tested before getting together.
Yeah. So along those lines, and I did kind of post this up on Laura's page about my situation with the county, with the health department. Remember, folks, you can get a free COVID test from the county health department. Montgomery County Health Department will give you a free COVID test. You call them up. I was scheduled in less than 5 minutes. I mean, it literally took me less than 5 minutes to get it scheduled.
There's also
do
an
it online,
online
too.
option. Yep.
And we got the results back in less than 48 hours. So I took the test Friday afternoon. By Sunday afternoon,
they call you on the weekend.
Yep. By Sunday afternoon. Well, we didn't get a call. They only call you if you test positive. They send you a.
Mine called.
Oh, did they?
A little.
Okay.
This was a few months ago now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they called to say we wanted to make sure you saw, but that wasn't within the 48 hours.
Okay.
But the results were up.
Okay.
Within
So
48.
when I went on Friday, this was the procedure. This was last Friday.
Right.
They'd only call you if you test positive.
Got it.
They will send you a message through this message system that you set up where you can get the results. So
Okay.
I went online and saw the results,
Got it.
and we were negative.
Right.
But we got those results back in less than 48 hours.
Right.
They said 48 hours.
It's as
Right.
quick
They-
as
Yeah, it's really quick.
Right. Quicker than the private like CVS and Patient First
CVS
from
was
what
out of
yeah.
the instant tests when we went there. So that was one of the reasons why I decided to go to the health department. I figured since I was going to have to wait 48 hours
and also
anyway.
people free.
Yeah.
Free. And
Free.
if you live in Montgomery County, or if you live outside of Montgomery
And
County,
work
but
in
you
Montgomery
work in
County,
Montgomery
yep.
County, you are eligible to get
We
the
have
test.
done that a couple
No
times.
questions
Yep.
asked. They don't ask you if you've been exposed. They don't ask you if you have symptoms. They just
Right.
You
Right,
just
you can tell them those things so
Yes.
that they know, but it's like even if you're just curious,
Yeah.
which we were when we've done it was when we were either going to be traveling or were sick and kind of just wanted to be sure.
Right.
But I think it's worth doing. I've tried to encourage people like just do it. Like
Just do it.
just do it. It's a great way to catch it.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's something that people can do if they're going to insist on getting together with their
Right.
family and you
Right.
live here in Montgomery County. The other part of it, too, is you should check with your health department. You should check with the health department in your county.
Right.
They might also be offering this
If
stuff.
you have one, Berks County doesn't have
Berks
a
County doesn't have a health department.
Right.
Chester County does.
Right.
Bucks County
Yep.
does. Philadelphia County does.
Yeah.
So check with your counties if you live in one of the other surrounding counties. You might be able to
Yep.
get it for free. And like I said, super easy,
Yeah.
not intrusive at all. Had the results back quick. I
Yeah.
would recommend
It's
it.
it's
for
about
anybody.
as easy of a situation as you can do.
That's
in
been
this
great.
situation. Yeah. So everyone just needs to be super careful, and maybe just this isn't the year that you see your family for Thanksgiving.
It's not. It's for us. It's not.
Right,
It
and,
was going to be. We were going to have some travel involved, and the plug got pulled on that.
Yep.
Because it's just, and it's not just about the risk to our individual family, because that everybody can kind of be like, oh, I think I'm fine. It's the big picture. The healthcare system is becoming overwhelmed.
Is sagging under the pressure right now, and there are states out west in Republican-led states that are like waving the flag right now. Like, all right, that's it. They're finally putting up mask mandates, and because their health systems are just crumbling. And there's certain states where it's getting really bad. Yeah, I don't want to contribute to that.
No, right.
Yeah. So just be smart. And it's not the end of the world if you don't get together for Thanksgiving. It's just a day.
It is. It's hard for people though, because I know that it's meaningful, but it's like part of it is mindset of just accept.
Yes.
I mean, I know but not everybody will hear this, but just accepting it and making the best of it this year. And I'm already thinking ahead for Christmas. Like, how do we make it fun? How do we do something maybe outside, distanced, but it can't be the normal thing. It just cannot be the normal thing.
Right.
No, I think mindset's the biggest part of that. We talked a lot about that during the stay-at-home order. Yep. There are some things that we do out of convenience. And maybe we need to reprioritize what our convenience choices are.
Yes.
And do things that are really necessary.
Right, and maybe, like, you don't need to go to the grocery store every other day. You can go once every 2 weeks.
You can
do that. And if you feel like having something tonight and you don't have it, and you're put it on the list for next time. You don't need to run out and get it. And we need to get back.
We don't always have to
that.
You
don't have to give in to every whim.
Hard.
And maybe that's just a good way of living to begin with.
Right.
Maybe that's a good way of living.
Right. I don't know. Yeah, we don't need to
people can figure it out for
We're
themselves.
big on that instant gratification though. We're like, I want it now.
Of course.
So it's hard. It's that added to the whole I don't want anybody telling me what to do thing is making this a difficult thing for people to handle. It's
guess what? I don't know the government tells us what to do all the time.
I know.
There's a health code. There's fire code that tells you how many people can be in a building.
Right.
There's a UNO certificate that you got to get for your rental or for your house before you can move in. There's the government tells us what to do all the time with our own.
You know what's
space.
Interesting? I just listened to this podcast the other day because now I'm like listening to more and more podcasts just to try to get better at ours. There was a really good podcast, and it was about this Vermont town that got taken over by libertarians.
Okay.
And these were conservative libertarians who didn't want any government regulation. And through some of the choices that they made, the town wound up getting overrun by bears, black bears.
Is this a true story?
It's a true story.
Okay.
It sounds like a joke.
It sounds like a Northern Exposure episode.
If you Google search like
Vermont bear libertarian.
Yes.
Okay.
If you search Vermont libertarian bears, it actually wasn't Vermont. It was New Hampshire.
Okay.
New Hampshire libertarian bears.
Right.
The stories will come up.
Okay.
But I found it interesting, and it relates a lot to what Laura just said, that people don't want this government intrusion into their lives. But just like you're saying, there's some reasons why.
Yes.
The other part of it too is
the spaces on a crib for a baby used to be this far apart. Now they're this far apart because babies' heads were getting stuck in there. So things like that. Those are government telling us what, because
if you don't want a bear coming into your backyard and eating your cat, there might be some rules that you want to institute in your town.
Exactly.
The state might need to intervene.
Rules that might feel too intrusive sometimes, or like, well, what's the point of that, or whatever.
But left to our own devices, we're not going to do the right thing because we're not collectively very smart.
And on balance, there are times where there's government rules that do end up being more harm than good, and they can be relooked at. It's not that it's not that it can never go so far in the other extreme. It's just people who. Some people think that everything will work itself out on its own. I guess that's the general libertarian thing.
Guess what?
The free market will correct itself.
It will work itself out by bears.
By
bears.
They're bears.
The bears will work it out for you.
Bears.
All right. So it's quarter after. We should wrap it up. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. We had a nice crowd tonight. Thank you. We had some good feedback and some good questions. So if you are interested in getting more involved and being more vocal, follow the Facebook page for Advocates for Pottstown
Advocates
Schools?
for Pottstown Schools and Pennsylvanians for Fair Funding.
And Pennsylvanians for Fair Funding.
Yep.
So those are the 2 pages that you can follow. And Laura will give lots of tips and guidance on
and
how to
reach
get
out
involved.
to me, private message me if you are curious about maybe diving in deeper. If there's anything you want to do, I will always happily provide guidance on that.
Laura Johnson is very responsive on her Facebook page, I will say. I occasionally post things on there, not thinking that anybody's going to respond to them. And then Laura will jump up.
I normally have something to say. Sometimes it gets me in trouble, I admit, but
that's okay.
Oh, well.
it's fun.
Sometimes,
It's mostly fun. It's mostly good.
Good trouble, right? Isn't that what John said?
At least
Good trouble?
95% of the time, yeah.
Yeah.
5% of the time I might be like, that wasn't worth it.
Maybe I shouldn't have said, you know.
But still.
Whatever. At least you're trying. Like, I got to give you credit. And you and I don't always agree on everything on Facebook. But at least you're out there doing it. You're putting your money where your mouth is. You know, there's something to be said for somebody that, 1, has something to complain about, but then 2,
to
has
actually
some
do something
solutions
to
on how. I have a
walk
lot.
in the walk. I mean,
Listen, I have a lot of respect for that. I will respect that position more than somebody who I agree with who just complains all the time.
Right. Yes, absolutely. You're walking the walk, and you're getting out there, and you're trying to fix the problem.
Yeah.
And
I think a
the
lot of
Pottstown
people
is-
are. That's part of what I'm encouraged about right now. And I have not been, my involvement in things in Pottstown has gradually increased over the years, and more with the schools as my kids have gotten a little older and whatever.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of folks right now who are quite engaged, and I am very, very encouraged by that.
Pottstown knows how to rally. We say it all the time.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I just want to see some more of it. Like, I want to keep going, and I want to meet more people like Laura. So we say this on every show. If you want to come on the show and talk about your issue, your nonprofit, your organization, your business, reach out to Amy and I.
Yep. I just had somebody message me last night. I said, I will get back to you when we're going to convene over the break and put our schedule together.
One of the things that Amy and I, one of the things that Amy and I are doing over our break in December. Remember, we're not going to be on the air over December. I have a couple. Don't get worried. I have a couple of solutions. We'll post some past episodes to keep you busy, to get your Jones fulfilled. But we're going to be making the schedule for the new year. So get in contact with us. We'll get you on. It's easy to do. Just reach out to us and say, I want to be on the show. We'll get you on the show. So there's that. Remember, like, share, and subscribe. We're up to 49 subscribers on
That's
YouTube.
That's very exciting. All right, if there's anybody new watching today,
please go to Porchcast Pottstown on YouTube.
Let me get it. I'll get the link and I'll put it right in the comments right now.
And subscribe. We need those subscribers. The first milestone we're trying to hit is 100 subscribers. It's like a video game. As we unlock amounts of subscribers, we unlock different functionality on YouTube. So my first goal is to get to 100 YouTube subscribers. And once we hit 100 YouTube subscribers, I'll start putting out some rewards for people who subscribe to help us hit our numbers. So don't forget you can tune in on Porchcast Pottstown on YouTube. Remember, folks, too, some guys and girls are having problems with Facebook. Porchcast Pottstown on YouTube gives you an alternative if you can't get logged on to Facebook for some reason.
Right.
There's been lots of updates going on Facebook, and it's messing up some people's connectivity. I had the same problem. I had to delete Facebook off of my phone and then reload it in order to get it to work right because it wasn't updating correctly.
Yeah.
So YouTube's always there for you for that. Thursday is going to be our last show for the month.
Yeah.
So Thursday is our last show. We're going to have Bill Vidiello from Victory Bank.
Looking forward to seeing Bill.
And the Tri-County Chamber of Commerce Chamber Chat. He's the host of that. He also has his own podcast, which I think he calls Off the Top of My Head.
Yep.
So we're going to talk to Bill about that. That's going to be an origin story of Porchcast Pottstown leading into the break.
Yes.
So that's a good way to close out the end of season 2 with an origin story.
Yes.
So that's what's going on. I also have Amy's link doesn't work. Luke Johnson, go to YouTube, type in Porchcast Pottstown. It'll take you right there. Sometimes the links don't work in the comments section. Sometimes it takes them a little bit time to load up, but we're really easy to find. I've done it 100 times. Just go to YouTube and the search bar, put in Porchcast Pottstown.
It's pretty easy.
It'll pop straight up.
Yep.
You can also Google. We now have enough content on Porchcast Pottstown that if you just Google Porchcast Pottstown, a whole bunch of stuff comes up.
That's awesome.
We've created enough content under that name. So you can find, we're super easy to find now.
Yep.
Thanks for all your support. Thanks for the continued support. We'll see you on Thursday. I'm going to break it down because I'm hungry and Bill bought us pizza. So I'm going to break it down. Laura Johnson, advocates for Pottstown schools. Laura Johnson's also a member of our Pottstown School Board. She is doing a lot of work to help us fairly fund our public schools, not just here in Pottstown, but across Pennsylvania. Please check her out. Check out these sites. And if you can do nothing else, just give her a pat on the back. Keep this woman motivated.
Yes.
Laura Johnson, Pottstown School District School Board member. Amy Wolf is the lovely co-host of Porchcast Pottstown. She's also the business manager at Wolf Baldwin & Associates, bringing you fine legal service in the borough of Pottstown since 1973.
I'll make an announcement on Thursday. Don't have time to talk about it now.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I am Matt Green. I am your local real estate expert. Please call me when you need to sell or buy residential and commercial real estate in Pottstown and the surrounding communities. We are Porchcast. Let's talk soon.
Good night.